Welcome to the Principles of Performance podcast, where we discuss how to optimize your health, fitness, and performance. Drawing on decades of experience of working as coaches, consultants, and trainers to top performers, athletes, and teens from professional sports to top universities to the U.S. military, Eric DeGatti and Mike Perry discuss topics and strategies of how to perform at your highest level and be your very best. Join us and our friends and colleagues who are leaders in the fitness and performance industry as we investigate and challenge the most popular training, nutrition, lifestyle, and recovery protocols. And away we go. Here we are with episode number 55 of the Principles of Performance podcast. I am your host, Eric DeGatti, and I am flying solo today as my co-host and friend Mike Perry is on his travels to head out to speak at the Perform Better Summit out in Chicago. So I did not want to miss out on the opportunity to grab the guest that we have today, because it's going to be some really great stuff. And I was introduced to this gentleman by Paul Collodi, who was our guest about a month or so ago, and he said, you absolutely have to have Coach Vanderbush on. So Kevin Vanderbush has entered his 40th year, God bless you, Coach, as a strength and conditioning coach for all sports at Ben Davis High School in Indianapolis. He teaches advanced weight training, which is a class that involves both strength training and athletic enhancement activities. He's a Purdue graduate and got his master's in Indiana, and he's also a strength and conditioning coach and is co-founder of the National High School Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association. He's received 5 different national awards, including the National High School Strength Coaches Association Hall of Fame, the American Football Monthly Samson High School Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year, the NSCA High School Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year, and the AFLAC National Assistant Coach of the Year Award, and the Pro Football Strength and Conditioning Society National High School Strength and Conditioning of the Year. It's quite a few and quite a background, and can't wait to talk to you. Coach Vanderbush, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
So reading up on some of the stuff that you're very kind to send over about some of the programs you run, I'm fascinated. And as someone who works with high schools, I was on the field this morning with a high school soccer team. I'm really interested in how you've created a culture and what you've done there at Ben Davis. And so one of the things that I was reading up on is something called a unified concept. Talk about what that means in a school environment.
Well, my contention is that athletes in the 14 to 18-year-old age range, the kids I get at high school, all need a base of strength and athleticism. And that very often they come to me with a lot of imbalances. Some of them have specialized early and they've only played their sport. Some of them have not gone through any type of physical movement development when they come to me. And when I break down, what people call sport-specific programs, I see that the bones really look the same. And at our school, we only get a short period of time to work with the kids. I have them all in a strength training class during the school day. So it's a 35-minute span. And in that period of time, by keeping the concept unified, where all my athletes, regardless of what sport they're in, are on the same program, then I can fit 80 kids in the class. I can supervise it. We can order equipment based on it. And, kids can be multi-sport athletes, and the track coach is not worried about what the football coach is doing with them. So it becomes an ease in terms of supervision, in terms of, ordering equipment, in terms of organization. But I have found that by improving the basic strength and athleticism of the athletes that I work with, they perform better on the field, regardless of the sport. And when I talk to my sport coaches and say, hey, what do you feel like we've left out, or what's not in there? And, they really can't come up with anything. So, I leave it to them on that court and on the field to do sport specificity, where their conditioning programs or, their skill work has to do with their particular sport. But for me, it's, let's create a better athlete, a more mobile athlete, a stronger athlete, a more powerful athlete, and then they take it from there.
I love it. And there's some points that you brought up that I want to circle back to, but I want to get to some of the quotes that you use quite often and that you use as pillars of the program. And one that stood out in reading some of your stuff is that we accomplish in proportion to what we attempt. Explain how you kind of see your coaching transcending just training and sport and really building better young women and men.
What I found out early on was that strength and conditioning is an unbelievable platform to develop people. And, for me, when kids leave me, 10, 15 years later, when they come back, we don't talk about the weight program. We don't talk about, what necessarily even what they did athletic. It's more about, they talk to me about the things that I help them that transfer to what end up being life lessons about structure, about discipline, about habits, about setting goals. Found early on, again, that when I study, there's only a certain amount of science I can use with the kids. A majority of my study now has to do with motivation, leadership, how to push buttons, how to, develop relationships. And, I start each day with the idea that I want to mentor, counsel, advise, and make a difference in lives. And when I do that, then it becomes that I'm looking for opportunities to reach kids, talk about their personal life, talk about what's going on in their sport, help them in terms of sports psychology. I mean, I really think strength and conditioning professionals need to have, if not a major, at least a minor in sports psychology. Because to me, there's only a limited amount of science that you can use. And I use this analogy. I say, if you think about a house, okay, and it's on fire and you can only take the most prized possessions and you get, so whatever you can fit in your luggage. When you look at high school strength and conditioning, it's kind of like that. What is out there in terms of, all the different tools that we could use is the house. What we actually get to use is what you can put in the suitcase. So for me, it's like once I've, done the basics of, this is what we need to accomplish in the room. To me, it's more about me talking with the kids, communicating with the kids, doing all those type of things. So, I feel like that's the most important thing I do. So, my reading now, it has to do with personal development, sports psychology, and all those type of things.
Now, how much do you think that we kind of bear the responsibility in terms of our branding and our image as strength coaches? And I know one of the things that frustrates me when I show up to some of the schools that I consult with and a coach brings me in and it's like, oh, here's the strength coach. He's here to quote unquote beat you up, right? And it's about, they think that we're just there to just pound kids into submission or be this kind of rah tough guy that you see on the sidelines jumping up and down or slapping kids on the helmet. Like, how much of that do we somewhat bear the responsibility of changing that that role that we fill and putting out a better image of who we are and what we potentially can be to an environment like it that you're in?
Well, I feel like strength and conditioning, in my opinion, has a lot of issues, and part of it stems from there are so many different ways to accomplish things and there's so many different methods that are used. But I also feel like social media has hurt strength and conditioning just like it has a number of other things, in that in order for me to show you what I know and how specialized, I got to put all these bells and whistles. I've got to do all these fancy things. I've got to, what in my opinion is do a lot of overcoaching to justify that what I'm doing is special. And, to convince that parent that you're giving that kid, exactly what they need. And, you can compare it to what some personal trainer is doing somewhere else. Fortunately, I've been around long enough where I don't have to deal with the same things that, some of the other new guys have to, just because our program is so established and, the parents, the teachers in the school, the athletic administration, the sport coaches have all seen what we're able to accomplish by staying very simple. And, my personality, and to me, any strength coach's personality should, be shown in how they coach. I'm not a big cheerleader. I'm not a rah-rah guy. No, I mean, I'm more of the type that if I can get you to, kind of get fired up based on the things I'm telling you, it's much more important than me being the one that's out there in the middle of the field that everybody's looking at. I see some strength coaches that to me are kind of, take on that court jester or cheerleading role. That's not who I am. And to me, I want to be able to walk away. I want to be able to be on the sideline and have my kids be fired up and be motivated and do things the right way, as opposed to relying on me for that. And if I do my job right, I can walk out of the room and the room looks the same. I can walk off the field and the field looks the same. So, my contention has always been that, that what we do is that we transfer that responsibility to the athletes, and that by, using what our strengths are, that, we can coach in different ways, but it's got to be that we coach in a way that is going to be most effective for developing the athletes.
So that's a great segue into something I know you're passionate about being a huge advocate of having every school have a qualified strength and conditioning professional or staff, and a lot of great work that's being done by the NHSSCA. So how do we get school systems to first see the priority and the need? And then second, how does it get done with so many schools working with such already strained budgets?
I started 40 years ago, okay, in 1984, back when even, smaller colleges did not have strength coaches. And, I was fortunate enough to, when I graduated from college, to be in a situation where a school had just hired a football coach who had been at the collegiate level, where they were just starting to have strength coaches. And, it was a school that had purchased some equipment. So there was kind of a need or a feel for the idea that, we need somebody to kind of run this place. So when I got started, there weren't a whole lot of people around, but what happened was by allowing us to do what we did, by have the classes, have the strength program, we became very successful very quickly. Within a 3-year span, a school who had averaged, 3 wins a year in football for the previous 47 years, won a state championship. And we won 4 state championships within 5 years. And at one point, we're national champions. So schools from around Indiana came in and said, what are they doing that's different? I mean, I've been visited over the last 40 years by, I think, close to 400 schools, but many of them came in within the first 10 years once we became successful. So as a result, what happened was all of the schools in the area started looking at strength and conditioning at the high school level differently. They started building rooms, they started having the class, they started hiring individuals that were specific to strength and conditioning as opposed to having a sport coach do it. So I think some of this stems from once you get somebody that develops it and is successful, then other people around are okay with it. It's kind of like the idea to me of field turf on football fields, at the high school level. Once somebody got it, everybody else around got it. Now we don't play any fields, on grass fields in any of the football games that we play. But it's the same thing with strength and conditioning. Within 10, 15 years, I found that there were 30, within a 30-mile radius of full-time high school strength and conditioning coaches. In Indiana, over the last 3 years, I'd say there's at least 15 to 20 openings for high school strength and conditioning. Yet when I go nationally, I found that there are pockets of the country that haven't caught on to that. And it hasn't been that somebody has been that, torchbearer that everybody else is looking to. So with them, I think it's going to necessitate that somebody going in is going to have to be able to figure out who you push the buttons with administration. Because at the high school level, strength and conditioning is the biggest factor in the success of an athletic program. So these schools that are putting all kinds of money into coaches, into fields, into gymnasiums, into everything they put it into, some of them don't understand that creating a better athlete, is something that's the most important thing that they could do. It's not like at the high schools we recruit for the most part, unless you're a private school, but you have to deal with the students that you are given and make them better. What I have found is that I can take kids and make them, college level strength at the high school level if given the resources to do so. So to me, it's about people going in and talking to the right people to convince them that this is what we need to do. If we're going to have, this program, that we need to give all our kids the resources to be successful. Explain how success in athletics, can help community pride, school pride. Explain how success in athletics is going to allow kids to be better, when they move on to college, and how much athletics can actually do for them being better in whatever area of life they do, and goal setting and so forth. But making them successful at it is what we're trying to do. So to me, it's pushing the right buttons, it's talking to the right people, it's getting a strength class during the day, because even on a limited budget, if you hire a strength coach to teach strength and conditioning classes, they can have more kids in the class than a typical teacher can. So in the school itself, when you're trying to find spots for kids, it's cheaper sometimes to have a strength coach who has 40, 50 kids in a class than it is, that math teacher only has 20, 25, because it's almost like 2, teaching positions. So really, it doesn't cost much if you use the general fund to hire, as a teacher to do the strength and conditioning, and then it's just an extracurricular pay after school, like the typical coaching pay is. So, if the right bullet points, are presented, if, a show of what has been successful, schools buy in. kids don't need 7 academic courses in a day. They need an opportunity during a school day to, move, to feel good about themselves, to develop their self-concept. And so, I mean, there's a lot of, unbelievable, positives that can happen if, you develop a strength program at the high school level.
And, I think that, as well as, dovetailing, and I want to talk a little bit more about PE, is I think it can be the most valuable room in the building, as it can really fortify and help everything that's going on way beyond athletics, right? In terms of behavioral stuff, in terms of just energy and wellness and all those other things for even the non-athlete. And it can actually be a great unifier in some ways that I've seen when it's done right, is that it kind of takes away that barrier of the athlete, non-athlete, when you have kids who are working on playing with each other in the same room. And it's not just about, I go and lift weights because it's part of my sport. It's now, this is part of making, as we said earlier, building better humans.
Well, I would tell you this, at our school, we have so many athletes that we do, have different classes for the athletes and the non-athletes, just because we are, in the athletic class, we're doing plyometric jumping, we're doing footwork drills, we're doing cleans, we're doing things that are specific to an athlete. And we look at our physical education program the same as other disciplines within the school. You're not going to take a general math student and put them in advanced calculus. So for us, we have a fitness and conditioning class, for those students that, we want to develop, teach them how to lift weights, teach them how to move better, teach them how to change their body composition. But then we have the advanced weight training class for those the students that are athletes. So, the kids who've shown above average interest or an ability in any specific area, I think deserve a class that is a higher level class to work on those specific needs. But, we feel like strength and conditioning is an important component of any, students, high school participation. I mean, when they leave there, they should know how to change their body composition. They should know how to, be more fit, so that, throughout life, they realize it's an important component to be healthy.
So let's segue what you just said, as well as something you said earlier, is that by the time they get to you at the high school level, you're kind of starting almost behind. And it's because of the lack of physical literacy that they're kind of stepping in with. So if you could create an ideal curriculum for kids starting as young as elementary school, what are some of the things you'd like to see implemented so they are better prepared physically and mentally by the time they get to you?
What I see constantly is that somewhere between the age of toddlers and when they arrive at high school, they've lost a lot of flexibility. They've lost a lot of movement skill. I have kids who have tough time with just no weight getting down to a squat position. Their heels come off the ground, they lean forward, they just can't bend. I've got kids that can't just do a simple lunge. I've got kids that don't understand in any way how to change direction. So to me, an ideal situation would be that throughout physical education, K through 12, throughout athletics, K through 12, that the early, experience involves things like a very efficient dynamic warm-up. I mean, I look at dynamic warm-ups as not just warming up for activity, but improving athleticism. So, I mean, we do our lunge walks, our 45-degree lunge, our side lunge. We do different movement skills that to improve athleticism in addition to getting them ready to participate. But I'd love it to where, all phys ed classes went through a dynamic warm-up. All, little league athletic, baseball, basketball, whatever it is, all did dynamic warm-ups where they were teaching kids how to bend. I'd like that they, at that level, teach kids how to change direction. I get kids who are way too high. They don't learn how to lower their center of gravity. They don't learn how to bend. And I'm teaching them basic, how to push off one side and go to the other at the high school level. I prefer it that these kids are getting that experience at a much younger age so that they're moving more efficiently. They're coming to me not with, some imbalances that I've got to fix, but instead, already have the basics down so that then we can move forward with, adding some resistance, and doing some things. But, we've got to take a while to get them to bend, to get them to move before we can go with what I think they're capable of doing at that high school level.
Now, how much do you think it's an additional challenge for that to get done in physical education and in the school environment when they're just not getting as much of that organically? They're not, when you talk about the ability to change directions and accelerate and react and read and so forth. You used to get that playing tag, but you see
Yeah.
playgrounds with kids playing tag anymore. You don't get to see even where they would have climbing apparatus at playgrounds have been taken away. So a lot of the access to just being able to go out and have free movement is not there. And now it makes it more challenging to try to jam that into a school curriculum. So, how do we address some of that challenge where we have a more sedentary and less, as I said, organically active youth population?
Well, I think, we've got to understand that it's not happening the way it should in schools. Now it would be great if you could get down to the schools and, convince all the elementary PE teachers, the middle school PE teachers to do that. But, sometimes their hands are tied. They get a kid one semester within a 3-year span, or they get a kid for 20, 25 minutes. So I think it's going to rely more on, a lot of the youth athletic programs to understand that need instead of just, kids used to go out and play on their own. They used to go outside and like you said, tag. I know when we were younger, we played baseball where right field is an automatic out, pitcher's hand, things like that. Kids have no clue of what that is anymore because the only thing that they do are scheduled practices. And what needs to change, I think, or the best way to make a change is to educate those youth athletic coaches to where it's not just dad, wanting to win the league championship, but instead, how can I develop these kids so that they're going to perform better later? So get into our youth athletic programs and, somebody from the strength and conditioning community actually getting down there and saying, all teams should be participating in this. This is how you stretch correctly. This is how you warm up correctly. These are some things that all of your athletes should be able to do. These are some drills that are going to help teach them how to change direction before you worry about, how many plays you can get in and, scheming the offense and all the things like that aren't really the carryovers necessary for them to be successful later on.
And I hate to be the one to keep bringing up challenges, but one of the challenges now with that is even at the youth level, you're seeing a lot of movement out of town recreation based sports to club level and pay for play type situations. And that's a little bit tougher nut to crack.
Yeah, it's and really, the parent that feels like the only way my kid is going to get noticed is to play on these all-star teams and do all these travel teams and so forth. But I have found that I've seen athletes in our school and I've seen athletes around that you keep hearing about that they stayed home, they worked on development, they did all that, and still we're getting those scholarships, which is kind of what we've turned into now is that we develop youth with the idea that they're all going to be either scholarship athletes or professional athletes. The numbers, you've seen before the percentage that actually happens to, but our parents don't seem to understand that. Even at a large school like ours, where we've been very successful, for instance, in football. In a good year, we'll have 4 or 5, Division I athletes. A number of Division II and then Division III, but we're not getting an unbelievable amount of kids. But I would say there are probably 40, 50 parents that think their kid is a D1 athlete. So, that becomes part of the issue is that becomes the focus, as opposed to, some of the things that are really much more important.
Now, something that I know is very important is, and I know for myself and my personal experience in getting in the door with some school systems is the more forward thinking athletic directors and so forth really wanted to have an initiative to address injuries and wanted somebody that could support the athletic trainers who were just completely overburdened with beat up kids that are injured because you have this high level of specialization. You have kids who are playing year round in those sports, and you're seeing a lot more injuries happen, and they wanted to kind of stem the tide. So let's pivot towards our role in where we can do that and working hand in hand with the athletic training staff and keeping kids healthy and keeping them on the field.
I have a great situation in our school in that we have, 2 certified trainers at the high school level. We have some at the middle school level. And we have the technology to where I get on a daily basis something sent to me in an email of every single athlete and what, they talked with the trainer about, what particular injury they have, what type of modifications I need to make, what the restrictions are. So, we can work hand in hand with our athletic training staff in order to do what's in the best interest of all of our athletes. And it works out well. And, I'm a strong believer that, we do what the doctor says, we do what the trainers say, we make those adjustments, as opposed to let's just push this kid through. My area is strength and conditioning, their area is athletic training. I need to make sure that I look at them, on that same level as the ones that, I go to say, how do we adjust for that kid? So, I think what we do has been shown over the years, by doing the program that we're on, by doing the athletic enhancement activities, different movement skills, that I feel like our athletes at our school, are more resistant to injury, than what I see around. And I know that I've heard from, doctors and, sports medicine people in the past that, when they find out the kid goes to my school, it's like, okay, I realize what they've been doing. I know, where they can go. I know, how it'll be taken care of. So I think you kind of develop a reputation as to, we've developed these kids in a way to where, they have different expectations for the rehab. They have different expectations for, what they can go through. So, I think it's really important that you work hand in hand, but I also think that it's important that you develop, the culture of the strength and conditioning program that can show that you are doing the things, as a part of the program that are helping, not prevent completely, but, reduce the amount of injuries that occur.
So let's get a little bit into the X's and O's of your program. And so being in enough high school weight rooms over the years, it can get pretty chaotic when you have so many different levels of ability, physical and mental maturity, various sports, different genders. Talk about how you kind of manage all that and a little bit about what your 3-set system is.
Well, when I go to conferences, when I go to clinics, I have got to go with the understanding of the variables that I have. And I have classes that are between 60 and 80 students at the same time. I get 30 to 35 minutes with them. So when I look at what I can do and what I can accomplish in that period of time, I've got to look at it with that understanding of what my limitations are. I personally start with the idea that a high school age student, you cannot put anything into a computer and it cannot spit out what that kid can do on a particular day. High school age students are dealing with all kinds of stresses. They've got boyfriend, girlfriend issues. They've got parent issues. They've got stresses in class. They've got sport issues and so forth. So for me to give them a particular weight that you're supposed to be using on this day with a number of repetitions that you're supposed to complete, I think is not taking into consideration, what the high school athlete is like. So there is some autonomy in my program, but what I have developed is a system where I can teach the kids very quickly, how to determine how much weight they should be using, when they improve, and be able to show their improvement. So for us, we came up with, they're going to do 3 sets within a 7-minute time block, which that means they're going to have 1.5 to 2 minutes rest between sets. The 3 sets are all going to have the same weight on there. So the weight is based on, if they've done a max in a certain lift, they know that, or it's based on what they've done previously. But what they do is once they can accomplish 3 sets at the targeted amount of repetitions, they know that they're ready to go up in weight. It may be that the first set, if we're trying to get 3 sets of 10, they get 10, second set only 8 or 9, third set 7 or 8, they're fine. They're within that range that we're looking for. But once they can get 3 sets of 10, they go up. So my kids who, regardless of their intellectual level, experience and so forth, can figure out how to put on a weight and see if they can do it 3 times with whatever the rep scheme is for that week. And so they have an understanding of what their goal is, what they're trying to accomplish. They understand the charts on the wall where they know that once we go from 10s to 8s, they just look at one column and they move over to the next. So for me, instead of sitting in front of a computer forever, instead of having kids trying to run around with iPads or phones or whatever to try to figure things out, it becomes very simplified. And they have an understanding of when they've improved. They have an understanding where they're going. So for me, I feel that a high school age athlete should be between 8 and 12 repetitions the majority of the time. In addition to getting these kids stronger and more resilient, I just feel like the resiliency in terms of confidence, in terms of, what their body composition is going to look like. I've had a number of schools say your kids just look different. I think part of it is that we stay within that range longer than most. So for us, on things like bench, squat, and clean, we'll go with sets of 12 for a week, sets of 10 for 2 weeks, sets of 8 for 2 weeks, sets of 6 for 2 weeks, and then 1 to 2 weeks of 6, 4, 2, and then we will test a 1 rep max. For the other lifts that we do in the room that don't require that we test them and assess them in it, we go 1 week of 12s, 4 weeks of 10s, and 4 weeks of 8s. So it becomes very simple for the kids to understand. I feel like it develops my kids in the way that, establish the goals I'm looking for, which in part is self-confidence. So, I mean, I include things in my room like bicep curl. Some people, think it's taboo, but if my kid walks out of the room and thinks his arms are bigger and he's going to perform against a kid whose arms are smaller, I feel like my kid has an edge. And, until they, start doing things where, a kid is going to flex his hamstrings, after making a tackle instead of his arms, I'm going to keep doing bicep curl. So, some of the things we do have to do with what we're trying to accomplish, and we're trying to make them better athletes, more, more confidence when they perform. So to me, that does it. But as far as the overall room and the chaos, by sticking with a unified approach, by, all of the kids being on the same 5-station program, 2 days upper, 2 days lower, half the kids on upper one day, half the kids on, the same half on lower the next day. You can organize and structure things in the room to where there's a time clock that once it hits 0, they know that they move on to the next one on the rotation. Each week, the starting station changes. So it gives them some variability, even though the weights, the actual lifts have not changed. The amount of weight used has changed. Their starting station has changed. But you can organize a large group of athletes in a pretty condensed area because everybody knows where they're going, when they're going, and so forth. But we also organize it in a way to where I have the older kids help the younger kids. I'm developing leadership in there. So when our kids first start out, if there's a group of 8 kids or a bench press, 4 different bench press, 2 kids per bench, I've got the older kids teaching the younger kids initially. So it becomes an atmosphere where those kids are looking at those younger ones and helping to bring them along. So it's not about how much weight we're lifting. It's about, are we doing things the right way? And so I've got a number of peer coaches throughout the room. So by having kids helping kids, you can manage large groups. By having the structure in the organization, you can manage large groups. By having the unified concept, it doesn't become as chaotic, it is when you're looking at some other things.
Hey, everybody, a quick break in the action here. Hope you're enjoying the show and we appreciate you listening. We're working hard to bring you the highest quality content and best guests every single week. So if you could do us a big favor and go and like and subscribe to the show on whatever platform you get your podcasts on, it would be greatly appreciated. Be sure to listen at the end of the show also to find out where you can find out more information about our courses, as well as a special discount code for all our listeners. Thanks again, and let's get back to the show. Oh, there's a lot of gold in what you just said right there. So I want to kind of pick out some of the nuggets that I took away. One is I love what you're saying about the bicep curls, and I had that kind of aha moment myself. I used to be the stubborn, stand on the soapbox and bicep curls don't win a state championships. And then I realized, the kids are just going to their local gym and doing them anyway. So instead of having them go on their own and do dumb things, why don't I just bring it into the room? And it got more buy-in from them. But one of the things that I see coming out of the way you've set it up, and okay, once you've hit these targets 3 times in a row, then you get to advance. There's a gamification there, and it kind of gives them challenge, in which it gives them ability to create some competition within their groups or within even themselves. And also it takes the bias out of it, which I love. Is it's not me telling you can't lift heavier. I'll let you lift as heavy as you want once you've earned that badge, so to speak. So talk about where that comes into play in terms of either the self competition or competition within the room, and kind of brings that entire energy to it.
Well, I want it to be where it's not me standing over them cracking the whip. It's them, understanding what they're trying to accomplish and what it takes to get there. And so by challenging them to come up in with goals each day, I want to be better at this and so forth, or, to me, it creates that autonomy that you need, where your athletes are saying, these are my goals as an athlete. These are my goals in terms of body composition. These are my goals in terms of strength. We do a 1 rep max. And I know some people struggle with the idea of having high school age kids do that, but, it helps with assessment. It helps with motivation. It helps with confidence. We've got boards in the wall. I know some people are against record boards. They feel like it only, indicates the top athletes, but, we have it by weight classes. So there's all kinds of kids that are getting their name up there. I have kids that take pictures of our weight boards, and you see them at their senior open houses. I've got parents who come in and say, my kid made the board. Can I take a picture? A lot of kids in my district, we come from a very low income district. they don't necessarily get a lot of recognition. They don't get a lot of praise. So having their name up on a board there may be the only time their name is really noticed, throughout the school day. So, I mean, I think all those things are important, that kid feel good about accomplishing things, setting goals. But when it becomes self-directed, and I really feel like it means more. When a kid is invested in himself and gone after things himself, I think he feels much better about, I've accomplished this and I've accomplished it on my own. Back to the bicep curl. To me, I use this all the time. It's like sometimes when we raise kids, if you eat your vegetables, you can have dessert. And I feel like the curls are dessert. A kid walks out of the room and he's pumped up. He's got a little bit of a pump. He's feeling stronger. It's like, I got stronger today. If he walks out of the room and all we've done is some mobility things and so forth, yeah, we think we've produced a better athlete, but we haven't produced a more confident athlete. Or a kid that feels better about himself, that carries over to everything else he does throughout the day. When a kid looks different at the high school age, he carries himself throughout the school differently. You see him wearing different clothes. I mean, the shirts become a little bit tighter. Everything is just like, I want to show what I've accomplished, and they feel better about themselves. So, I mean, I think you really have to take that into consideration when you're working with a high school age athlete.
And it's funny you use that analogy. I use a very similar one. We call it treat of the week. And I put it the same way. We have a little arm workout we do. And I say, if you eat your meat and vegetables, you do everything, you get to do treat of the week. And then at the end, crank up the music, roll up your sleeves, and there we go. So something that's kind of stirring in my brain as you're talking. It's a little off topic, but not necessarily, is that when we talk about competition and being self-motivated and self-driven, I'm constantly, as I get older, trying to fight being the old bitter coach and trying to stay connected. And I get around a lot of the skill coaches that are like, the kids aren't what they used to be. They're not as tough as they used to be. And you hear that quite a bit. And I think at some level, there may be a shred of truth in that, but there's also there's an element that you need to communicate with them differently. And I don't think the human brain has evolved that much in the last 20 years or whatever it may be, that they've lost that wanting for competition, that wanting for self-betterment. That I think it's just you need to find the right tools, like you've done, to draw that out of them and to challenge them. They still want to be challenged. It just need to be more artful than, like you said, than just cracking the whip and blowing the whistle. So talk about like how you've seen it evolve since you've been doing it for a while, in terms of, are the kids really different, or we just need to be better at getting them and getting them to accept challenge and embrace challenge?
Having done it 40 years, I hear this a lot. It's like, oh, kids have changed. Kids have changed. Well, in my room, if you came in and now versus 30, 40 years ago, the expectations and the standards are still the same. And regardless of whether the kids have changed or not, I've held the bar up at that same, I'm not lowering the bar, but I may have to find a different means of allowing you to reach that bar. So, what I've seen is that, before, where kids were used to just, the coach knows what he's doing, so forth, you have to be able to convince kids you know what you're doing. Now, I mean, once you establish a culture within a school district, I think it becomes easier than most people have. But, there's some subtle things that have to happen. The attention span, with everything that's changed in technology, you've got to realize that now you're not going to sit them down for any length of period to give them information. You've got to have bullet points, and you've got to do it along the way as opposed to all at once. I mean, so there's some things like that you say, okay, this is what they're used to, or this is what they've gotten outside of here that I need to adjust so that my instructional methods, may change a little bit and alter to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of these kids. But in terms of standards and expectations and what they can accomplish, that hasn't changed. High school kids are still high school kids. And, when you look at, 20, 30 years ago, they said the same thing. No matter how long you're in education or you're in coaching, you're going to hear kids have changed. And, when I've done speeches at times, I've talked about even just, I use that as an example, back in the day when in schoolhouses, when they suddenly got indoor plumbing, people were like, okay, well, these kids are always asking to go to the restroom now. I mean, at that time, they're still saying kids are different now. But the thing is that some of the things within schools have changed. We got phones in schools. We got things like that we're dealing with. So you do have to make adjustments based on those things. The kids are growing up with internet where they can look things up and say, this guy is doing this, or they can see, on social media that, oh, this is this activity I saw this guy doing. Well, you have to understand where they're coming from and make those adjustments based on what their life is like outside of there. But to say that we can't get kids in the same place, I think is wrong. I mean, because we can get kids in the same place. Sometimes it just requires a little bit different tactics.
I love it. So let's get back to some logistics here. And I know some of the big limitations that high school coaches face are time, space, and budget. And it's great when you can have a program with a huge field house that's fully equipped and open field space and open access to athletes. But if you don't have those things, like I have schools that I work with that we have if it's a 20 by 20 weight room with 3 squat racks and we have a hallway to work with, that we got to make sure there's no, French fries from lunch laying on there. Like we have to be a little bit more innovative. So talk about how when you're starting small and you need to be able to work within the confines of that, what are some of the suggestions you have for those coaches who are trying to build something where they don't have a lot to work with?
I've actually been, called in to consult from different schools, and there was one school in particular that's very small school. It's kind of a K through 12 school. The 9 through 12 enrollment was like 260 students, and so they were very limited. We ended up taking a supply closet and moving some things out. It was kind of an equipment room type thing, where it's not very big, about the size of a classroom was all it was. We got enough equipment to where we could design a program that was similar to mine in terms of it would be 5 stations of upper and 5 stations of lower, and they'd have 2 pieces of equipment that would accomplish that. They put that in, and they could do it very cheaply because they didn't go with a high-end, equipment manufacturer. They went with one that, will use some of these things that we've got lying around to fill in and so forth. So it didn't cost them a whole lot. Well, they started doing that on a regular basis. Within a couple of years, they actually became state champions in basketball, state champions in baseball, and actually sent me one of the state championship rings because they felt like one of the key things in changing what they had done was developing a strength and conditioning program. So with very little money, with very little room, it was more of the idea of setting up something that was structured and consistent, within what the limitations they had, that they were able to be successful with it. And, with them, a small 1A school, which is the smallest division in our state, they were competing against schools that hadn't caught on yet. So, they were able to get that advantage. But yeah, I mean, you have to use hallways. You have to use the equipment that you've got. It's great when you can, order all the specialized equipment you want. But I think more important than that is the culture you establish about what you can accomplish with strength and conditioning. I mean, the athletic enhancement activities that we do once a week in the gym don't require much equipment at all. I mean, I've got some footwork ladders, I've got some medicine balls, but even if I didn't have the medicine balls, I could still run the program. I mean, jumping is jumping. I mean, we don't have, specialized boxes and cones. We teach kids, how to jump more efficiently, how to land more efficiently, how to get off the ground quicker. Those can be done, without equipment, and they can be done anywhere. So there are enough resources in terms of, exercise you can do. You can do things with, resistance wise that don't necessarily require expensive equipment, but are still resistance. You can do manual resistance. You can use, all kinds of things that are available to still accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. It takes just kind of getting a little bit outside the box and not saying, well, we don't have all this, but saying, what do we have that we can make work? I tell our kids that, when we went through COVID, before my kids don't have equipment at home. But right before it started, we said, okay, if this happens, we're limited here. These are the kind of things you can use around your house. We showed them how push-ups with chairs. We showed them how picking, turn a chair over. You can do bicep curl. We showed them how going against the wall. You can do, a military type push-up. We showed them how, grabbing milk jugs. You can do lateral raises. I mean, we went through a number of things that they could do around the house. Well, schools can do the same thing. You can find things where you can go to your wood shop or you go to your metal shop. If you got that, you can go to local distributors that you can find things that will allow you to do resistance work, will allow you to do athletic enhancement activities, but you just have to make them a part of the regular routine that these kids go through. So, yeah, I mean, having all the bells and whistles are great, but that's not what the key thing is. I mean, I can go into a room with no equipment and I still can, these kids can come out, they're going to perform better athletically and, I can get some things done.
as lousy as a situation as COVID was, I think it challenged everybody to be better. And when I was doing Zoom workouts with teams, and I had kids with literally with suitcases and box fans doing pistol squats and those sorts of things. So you had to be innovative, and you had to really figure out and reevaluate what your principles and directions were when you were doing your programming. So one of the things before we jump on to the next topic that I know that when I'm going into a school and looking at their existing gym setup is that and you touched on it, is it's not set up for the program. It's they buy equipment almost like they're opening up a local fitness center. And I explained certain situations where they'll buy a piece of equipment, and I said, well, that's a single user piece of equipment. You got this beautiful, you spent a tenth of your budget on a glute ham bench that only one person can use at once, and it only does one thing. And so now what am I going to do when I have 50 kids in a room? I can't have a line of 50 waiting for that. So in terms of when you're designing that room, some of those things, like I would always trade space for a single use piece of equipment. Talk a little bit about how, when you go into a room, what are the key factors you think that you need, and what are the big mistakes that you see being made in the schools that you consult with?
Well, what you mentioned is true. There's a lot of schools that'll build a room and then go figure out how they're going to use it, which is completely opposite of the way things need to be done. I mean, before you actually go and renovate, before you purchase equipment, you have to have in mind, how are you going to utilize it? And, looking ahead, how many kids are going to be in there at a time? What's your program philosophy? How are you going to do it? So for me, when we renovated 23, 24 years ago, it was about, okay, we may have to fit 100 kids in this room, and we're on a 4-day split routine. So the way it works best for us is to have, specialized areas where kids are doing those particular base lifts. So I knew that if I, ordered 5 pieces of equipment for each of the 5 stations, that I could fit 50 kids on that side of the room, 2 kids per equipment. So I ordered things with the idea of, this is what I have in mind as, this is what our base program is. And I think everybody needs to do that before you get started. I know some people just say, well, everybody's just putting in racks. So they put in a whole bunch of racks, but then they realize that there are things missing, there's only so many things you can do. And there's only so many kids can get on a rack at one time, that if they had ordered some more dumbbells, if they'd ordered some more things that, kids could be doing some other things and rotate into, the racks, that they'd be much better off. So I think you have to have your end goal in mind. You got to say, okay, these are the number of kids we're going to have in here. This is what the base program is. This is the amount of time that I've got. This is the number of stations I need to have. So how am I going to set up this room? How am I going to purchase equipment based on that in order to accommodate that? So, yeah, I mean, it's completely backward in a lot of schools. And, I know we go to a lot of schools where, they say, hey, what do we need? And I said, well, the first thing you need to do is get rid of those 5 things over there. I said, because, those are antiquated. They're just taking up space. That space would be much better used by, come up with a core station where kids could do this, and a number of kids could, get into that. Well, and I've heard the same thing, we have limited amount of money. What should we use it on? Well, you use it on those things that a majority of kids are going to be able to use. I mean, I always push the idea of dumbbells. I mean, with dumbbells, there's so many different things you can do, and, fill in holes that you have maybe equipment wise. It's nice to be able to buy, some more expensive equipment, but if your budget is limited, come up with just something you can use for resistance that will allow a number of kids, to get that particular movement that you're trying to get, for that. So, again, it's being creative, but it's also going about it the right way. It's and what you're saying is, it happens more times than not, is that they get the wrong people building the room out. It's like they may go to equipment manufacturer and say, hey, give us equipment, or the principal may make the decision. Decisions got to be made by the people who are going to be in there, the people who are going to design and organize what's going on. So, yeah, I mean, you've hit on a great point there.
All right. So one last area I want to dive into with a couple questions is talking about specialization versus multi-sport athletes. And so when you have kids who are multi-sport athletes, the time demands that they have are pretty exceptional in terms of practice time and individual skill work and everything else, in addition to their schoolwork. And sometimes when something needs to go, one of the things that does get cut back is strength and conditioning. So in terms of handling kids who play multiple sports and being able to deal with them, because they're always in season. There is no off season. Talk a little bit about how you address that.
Well, nowadays, even if a kid specializes, he's always thinks he's in season because, you finish the basketball season, you go right on to AAU, you go to summer ball. So even the kids who are in one sport are in that one sport year round. So, I think that has become an issue because I do think that especially developmentally when they're younger, they're much better off taking some time away from sport, a particular sport, and developing some different athletic skills, learning how to communicate, learning how to compete, learning how to win, learning how to lose, learning how to lead. I mean, all those things I think happen by being a multi-sport athlete. And, especially when kids are younger. I mean, they can't decide at a young age what they are most suited to, what they're going to enjoy later on. So I highly encourage, through the youth levels that kids participate in as many things as they can. And, there's a lot of parents who think, well, if I don't send all these specialized things in the off season, get these personal trainers, do all that, they're not going to be that elite athlete that I want them to be. And, I think that what you find is a lot of those kids burn out, a lot of those kids develop, stress injuries, a lot of those kids actually don't make it as a result of that philosophy. So I think they're better off doing as many things as they can. Now, when it comes, I mean, there are exceptions to that. I have, some kids that say, like for instance, the track coach wants me to run track because they said it'll make me better for football. And I say to them, okay, what area of football are you trying to improve on? And they're kind of looking at, well, I want to get faster. I said, well, are you fast enough to be one of the sprinters in track? No. Okay. So I said, how much time in track do you think they're going to work on speed? And so, we do work on, with our football players in the off season on speed work. We do work on, getting them stronger, doing some extra lifts after school and do some things. And, what I found is that our football players, for example, that come in, after school and do an additional lifting program that we have that involves some lunges, some step ups and so forth, for a period of time in the off season, in that time from January to March, very frequently improve their 40 time more than those kids that have gone out and done track workouts. So just resistance work has helped them with that speed that they're looking for. But, if a kid loves track, I said, do track. It's not about, whether it will make you better for one sport or another. It's about, do you enjoy that? You'll have fun with that. Will it be a good, getaway from just focusing on one thing all the time? So, for some kids, it's, to me, it's the right answer, 2-3 sports. But for some kids, not really like any other sport, they're not going to put their heart and soul into it, and it becomes a bad experience, and it becomes developing bad habits in terms of being lazy. Or if they're going into a sport where there's a coach that doesn't discipline or motivate the same way that the expectations are in the sport they're with, I mean, that's another, should they be doing that? So I encourage kids to do a lot of activities outside of their main sport, but I also got to look at the individual situation, because in some instances it's not necessarily that's the one thing you say, yeah, do as many sports as you can. Now, we've got athletes at our school, which is a very large school, that very frequently do 2 sports, rarely 3 sports. Our female athletes more often than our male athletes, and can be very successful at them. We've got some people playing Division I sports that have played 3 sports at our school, but specialize once they get to college. I think that's great. But a lot of that, I think, is as a coach knowing the kid, and knowing what their capabilities are, knowing what their mindsets are in terms of whether you encourage, discourage, or what you kind of lay out for them is in their best interest. But to me, I mean, any kid that loves multiple sports ought to play multiple sports. There are ways of getting around getting done what needs to be done in the off season that will still allow you to perform at a high level. And I think I've also found that those kids who take a little bit of time away and do some other things really perform better because they get excited about doing it again.
So you actually jumped right into one of my next questions, which was going to be the debate over utilizing and leveraging other sports to develop physical qualities. Like, hey, and the most common one is all football kids should run track to get faster, or hey, you should play basketball to work on your agility. And when people ask me that, I say, well, first of all, you need to know what your program is. Like, there are some track programs I've gone to that are really good at speed development. They're really good at being all encompassing, is that everybody's getting access to the training, and it's not just their 4x1 or 4x14. And then there's other ones where it's, I hate to say it, it's the English teacher who is looking for an extra stipend, who's on their cell phone the whole time and just says, has them go out and run a lap or time trials every week. And kids not only get do not get faster, they would have gotten much better, as you said, spending that time in the weight room, where they can develop those things that are more specific to them. But they've also given away one of the most valuable assets they have, which is time. I always explain to them, and this really is what you brought up, is that you only get 4 chances to play a winter sport in high school. And so if you want to do it, it's not going to probably be the deal breaker of you getting drafted into the MLB or you getting that Division I scholarship if you really love playing basketball, right?
Right. No, hit it right on the head. I mean, to me, I tell these kids that when I talk to the athletes, 5-10 years on down the line, and they come back, I've never had a kid say, I wish I hadn't participated in sport, that other sport. But I have had a number of kids say, I wish I hadn't given that up. I wish I'd played that. And so that's my conversation with kids when they talk about, well, I'm going to quit doing this and focus on this. A kid saying, I'm not going to play football anymore. I'm just going to run track because I did pretty well in track. And I said, well, this is what you're missing out on by not playing football. You've always liked football, and these are the things, being a part of a team sport like that, learning how to communicate, learning how to lead. It's not about how many reps you get in practice. It's not about how much playing time, but just being a part of something like that is going to teach you a lot of life lessons. It's going to make you better in whatever you do moving forward. And try to, have that conversation with kids, because, I really do think that, too much we're saying to these kids that, you've got to just focus on this one particular thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to, do you really like the sport? Do you enjoy it? Do you want to be a part of it? And that should be the first thing, the question that's asked, but yeah, football players are going to change direction from side to side a lot more than they are going to run in a straight line. So, unless that track program is developing, some other things in that particular time, and no, the kid's not going to, that's not the reason to do it.
So one more question that you just kind of sparked when you said kids coming back. And I think one of the greatest compliments I've gotten in working with high school kids over the last 20 or so years is when a kid comes to me and says, I'm getting ready to graduate. I want to study so I can learn to do what you do. I want to be what you are. How many young prodigies have you put out over the last 40 years who've said, Coach Vanderbush, I want to be the next Coach Vanderbush? How many have you had that situation?
Well, there's a lot of people that say, I mean, they know I'm getting to my last couple of years here. Okay. I mean, I've got year 40 right now, and I'm going through 41. So I'm actually going to graduate high school in June of 2025. So, there's some people out there that are like, oh man, he's got the greatest job in the world. I want to do that. And I have a couple that are out there that are high school strength coaches that, are expecting to be able to slide in. So, I mean, I think that they see what I do and say, that seems like that would be something that would be very rewarding. I've always approached it as, what I do is not necessarily just teach weight training. What I do is make a difference. And that's what my goal is for each day. And I think that when kids get out 5, 10, 15 years from that, later, when they talk to me, like I said, they talk to me about, the things that I taught them that were life skills that they feel like were very important. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, if you watch me work, if you watch the kids I work with and so forth, and, hear the kids, I think that they understand that I'm passionate about what I do, that I love my job, and that I enjoy my job, and there's some that say, man, how can you keep doing the same thing for 40 years? And I said, well, because there are new athletes each year. There's, new challenges. There's things about my job that just, it doesn't get old, it doesn't get boring. You don't get burnout, unless you change, the way you approach things. This is a job that you do forever. So, yeah, I mean, I hope my kids get into, I push kids to get an education, be teachers, be coaches, be strength coaches, and I've got a number of them that have done that. And, I feel good when they do that, and, proud of the fact that, they've seen that, what you can do with that, and feel like that's something I want to do with my life.
All right. So talking about moving forward and always kind of looking to the next new and exciting thing. Do you have anything on the horizon that you're specifically working on in your situation?
Last year at this time, I was working on a presentation where I actually did the keynote for our entire school district. So there were 2,400 people in the gym, and I gave an hour and 15-minute speech, which I always felt like was probably my most important speech, and really enjoyed it. But so start of school is Monday. Don't have that on my shoulders this year. But looking ahead, I'll continue to participate in the NHSSCA, state and regional type, activities where a lot of times they bring me in to do Q&As and that type of thing. I will continue to, have a number of people that'll come in and visit. Over the summer, I had, 6 different coaches. I'll have more throughout the school year. I always enjoy when I have visitors. I feel like I can give them a mini clinic. We can talk about things. I can, answer their questions specific to what their needs are. And I enjoy doing that because, I feel like, what you accomplish in life, what your legacy is, not only the athletes you work with, but the coaches you develop who are able to work with athletes. And that was, my intention in helping to found the NHSSCA, and it has always been my intention in having people in with, I sent you that Google Drive folder with, all kinds of presentations and links and so forth. I have shared that, thousands of times, with the idea being that if, people can become better at this, then, it pays off with student athletes. So, nothing really special coming up, no major presentations at this point. I've been fortunate enough that I've done a lot of national conferences and so forth, so they may be getting tired of pulling me into those things, feel like they hear what I have to say. But for me, it's more about continuing to do the things I do. We got some teams that have a lot of potential coming up. Right now I'm in the middle of preseason conditioning with football, working with those guys, develop some leadership there. So it's a never ending, job. There's always something to do. There's always challenges. So it doesn't always have to be something, that you can kind of put on a resume or put on a poster board, but it's always something that, allows me to, look for opportunities to make a difference daily.
Well, we certainly appreciate everything you've shared with us today, and appreciate the work you do and the impact that you're making and have made over all these years and will continue to make. So thank you very much for everything that you've done and everything that you've shared with us today.
Well, I appreciate getting the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you.
Awesome. And we want to thank you all for listening. And this has been the Principles of Performance podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Principles of Performance podcast. If you've enjoyed our content, please like and share on your social media outlets, as well as subscribe and give us a review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your preferred platform is to listen to. For more information on the Principles of Program Design courses and workshops, visit us at www.principlesofprogramdesign.com and follow us on all of the social media channels where we post new content every day. To save 10% on any PPD courses, enter the discount code PRINCIPLESPODCAST10 at checkout. If you have any questions we can answer or suggestions for the show, you can email us at info@principlesofprogramdesign.com or message us on social media. Thank you again for your support.